This podcast is a project of the Climate Designers Network.
This podcast was supported in part by grant funding from the U.S. Department of Education's Title IX grant program through the University of Illinois Center for Global Studies. The content of this program does not necessarily represent the policy of the U.S. Department of Education, and you should not assume endorsement by the federal government. Hey, this is Eric. It's June, so from our crew here at Climify, we want to wish everyone in the LGBTQIA community happy Pride. And in Canada, National Indigenous History Month is being celebrated every June, and we wish it was every month and in every country. We want to give recognition to the First Nations people whose land we are on. Welcome to Season 4 of Climify, where this season we want to help change the system. In this first series of 4 episodes, we're talking to people who are disrupting the status quo in their daily lives. The show format is a tad different this season. Each episode is broken into 3 segments. To begin, I'll be joined by one of our researchers on Climify to break down what we both heard in my interview with our guest and what you should listen for. Our second segment is, of course, our interview, which is always still hopeful with plenty of inspiration. And finally, our third segment breaks down what we heard as calls for action in the interview itself and what you can do to change the system through climate action. To kick off the season, we have a fantastic guest named Emma Askew. She's the founder of Earth Minutes in the UK, which works with organizations, charities, and businesses to communicate their environmental research campaigns and projects more effectively. And beside me is one of our amazing Climify researchers, Jackie Himmel. Jackie's a media arts and design graduate from James Madison University who has worked as a multimedia journalist. Jackie, it's great to see you again. We've been working for how many months on this together?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how long, but it's finally here.
Finally here. I think I put an ad out on LinkedIn like in November of 2023. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
it was one of those timing, it was something that I just needed to see and I found it and it worked out. Sometimes you don't know on
No,
LinkedIn how long something's been
no.
up for. So I was really crossing my fingers.
Yeah, we talked in December, and then ever since then, you and a bunch of other great people have been helping out with putting this season together. And now here we are launching season 4, and I'm excited for Emma. We're using this beginning part of the program to provide, I think, some more guidance on what to pay attention to in this interview.
When I started doing research on her, she was just very inspiring, especially for me,
Yeah,
because as you'll learn in the episode, she's very close to my age. And I feel like for me, that was very relevant,
we,
especially in systems.
I think we were kind of riffing before we recorded this about like, what were we doing when we were Emma's age? What was I doing? I was doing pretty much just going to work. And she's really going out there and making a difference. And that's super inspiring.
I think it'll just be really nice to hear somebody at such a young age who had the inspiration, the drive to want to do something and she did it. And it was just amazing hearing her talk about it because it just makes you want to go and do something.
Some of the things that really stood out for me, I think designers won't like very much because of learning more about their impact on the environment, doing work that's digital, whether it be film, streaming, whether it be things that are on apps or websites. So I think there's some sobering facts that she laid out, but she also has a lot of solutions too, which I think is necessary. And that's why we had her on the show. She's very solution oriented.
Yeah, it's I think a breath of fresh air, for
Mhm.
designers. And sometimes you just need somebody to call you out and say, "Hey, we could be doing this a more sustainable way." Or we could
Yeah.
be taking a different approach to this. And I personally think that's a great to hear new voices and a new perspective on things. And I think Emma really brings that to the table.
Yeah, and I think also connected to that is we're talking about being a designer. Well, not everyone's a designer. So some of the things that she's referring to about creating things that live online are things that everyone does, right? So there's like these daily choices that you can make that she will help you with in her own work so that you can lessen your impact, right? And a big part about this, which we'll hear in the episode, is about renewable energy and what that could do should we really put all of our eggs into the renewable energy basket in the future.
She really gives you a lot of options, which I think is really nice to hear. You can do something really small and it will still make an impact versus, hey, you could start looking into, renewable energies. And that is also a really great thing and a good impact to also want to make.
Or you could just start an organization like Emma and start
Oh, yeah.
changing the world. Yeah,
You could
in your
take one
20s.
big step, what did it say? She was 22 when she founded Earth Minutes. And
Yeah.
that's crazy. I was just graduating college and now she has this amazing youth-led organization, and I think that that just speaks volumes because it's youth-led, and they all specialize and strive for environmental communication, and they've just worked with organizations big and small, like you said, to really call out and be more sustainable and help them create these projects of design and media through sustainable outlets, and I've looked at some of her end products, and they're great.
Yeah,
They
they are.
It really says that you can really do anything through a sustainable lens. It's not going to tamper the quality of it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should just let everyone listen to Emma. So
Yeah.
without further ado, Emma, welcome to Climify. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm very excited to hear more about what you're working on and what you hope to be working on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, yes. One of the things that we're very excited about outside of the design of our branding this year, the guests, is our theme. And the theme of season 4 is called Change the System. And we're going to get right into it. What does the system mean for you?
Big question. I was having a long old think about what it means to me. And for me, there's a few key words that stand out: tradition, intrinsic, and deeply seated. I feel that the system is something that's embedded in
Yeah.
society, it pulls us all together. But tradition's a key one because we learn from tradition and we should evolve. And I feel like that's a great reflection of the systems that we currently operate in: economic, educational systems, all the systems that exist today, I feel are completely traditional and need evolving.
Yes.
They are set in their old ways.
I guess when we're thinking about that system and changing the system, it's so deeply ingrained, as you mentioned. How can anyone really change that?
Another great question. It's something that has been on my mind since really engaging in the climate movement, actually, since I was about 18. It's something that there's no easy answer, which is an absolute cop out, obviously. But,
No, I agree. I totally agree with that.
but there is an area that really feel strongly about that isn't discussed enough. I think a lot of the time you look at the big picture of the systems and you think, oh my word, it's super overwhelming and slow moving. All of these different systems are very stuck in their ways, very traditional, as we mentioned. And I really see it as the way that we're going to evolve them, the way that we can learn from the old traditions that needs to evolve, that we need to change them, is through environmental connection. And I really see, as a bigger picture, the climate and biodiversity crisis, a complete crisis of disconnection, and reconnecting more people to nature, to what it means to be human, to how we can coexist and with nature on our planet. that will really shift our systems because ultimately we'll realize that the systems aren't built in line with
Yeah.
nature. So reconnection.
Yeah. Because I think, and I've heard this from other conversations I've had, is that us people, we, for the longest time, have looked at where we live, nature on the earth, as serving us when we found out that that doesn't really work. And instead, we are part of it and we need to be living with it, learning from it. And so I'm wondering then, you have been very inspired by Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Future movement. And do you see the Earth Minutes project that you're working on as something that can change that system? Because I believe it can, and I've been kind of following it for a while. So it's really an honor to meet the person that started Earth Minute.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I absolutely believe that communication is going to be and is currently one of the most fundamental routes for change. And I guess bringing it back to the systems, I think what I really reflected on, especially throughout my kind of educational career, going throughout uni, is that the systems are so separated from nature and the environment. So a great example is the education system.
Yeah.
Geography is boxed. In terms of climate change, you learn within geography, some sciences as well, but mainly geography. So if you don't take geography, you start to really ingrain it within your mindset, within your lifestyle, that it's not of your interest. What I find really interesting is geography boxes climate change into one space. And so it really builds into your mindsets as well as into your lifestyle that geography is an interest, therefore environment is an interest. And actually, if you strip it back, it's not really an option. We live on this planet and we absolutely have to co-live with nature, with the environment to continue existing and to sustain humanity. So I think bringing it back to the basics of reconnecting to nature, these systems need to be completely unwound. And that's why really Earth Minutes came out of the Fridays for Future movement. I really wanted to evolve a way to reconnect more people to the planet. And that is through effective communications,
Hmm.
effective science communication, and also environmental project communication. People are driving amazing action. There's incredible knowledge and science out there. It's just how we relate to it and ultimately reconnect to it.
What's the mission of Earth Minutes, and what kind of offers and opportunities does it bring to people who go to the website?
Yeah, so I started Earth Minutes around 4 years ago. We're a youth led collective of environmental researchers and creatives. And our mission is to drive the future of environmental thinking and learning. What we mean by that is we specialize in environmental communications and we want to drive more effective communication of environmental research. So through films, social media, etc. And we want to make it more sustainable. So we want to challenge the way that we're communicating these messages so that we can share them in a fundamentally sustainable way. The film production industry is an incredibly carbon intensive
Yeah.
process, as well as more accessible and more inclusive. Ultimately, again, we all live on this planet. Everyone deserves the right to think and live more sustainably for a better future. So making environmental research more accessible through, I guess, beyond subtitles. So through dyslexia text, British Sign Language, language translation, all those accessibility elements are completely neglected in this sector. So we're really
Hmm.
trying to drive the future of that to make sure that it not only is more innovative and engaging, but also for all.
Yeah, I also really like the name Earth Minutes, and I'm curious about how you came up with that.
Ah, thanks. It's it's actually something that I didn't dwell on too much. Actually, it came pretty naturally.
That's good.
It was fundamentally down to, I guess, me personally wanting to commit my time to share Earth messages. So, environmentally related research, really dedicate not only my career, but my lifestyle to amplify the messages that I really cared about. So, and I also found that it was that urgency of climate action, always like 2 years left, the countdown.
Yeah, the
It's
scary clock.
exactly that real element of time can be conceived in two ways, where time is running out, urgency, but also if we took a step back and dedicated more time to it, whether it's in our lifestyle, making choices, in our careers, that's a huge element to environmental action. So it was that trade off that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I also appreciate what you're doing in terms of really being transparent and I guess walking the walk. Because when you look at your website, the very top, there's this banner and it talks about the carbon footprint of that website. And you said, I think it says website carbon. Can you talk about what that is and how do you find the offset for your website or and all those details?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that is progressing with in research at the moment, but there's still a lack of it. So digital sustainability is again very rarely considered. Now, as a young group, we really wanted to drive the future of comms in a more sustainable way. So we started to ask the questions of how are we sharing things online, social media, what is the impact of that in terms of environmental carbon footprints, as well as websites. And
Yeah.
beyond that, film production, not only the process of making film, but sharing film, streaming it online. And those questions really brought us into the space of digital sustainability. So in terms of where your videos are streamed, there are some renewable energy hosting sites that you can use that are going to be more beneficial than streaming on fossil fuel based websites, as well as colors are different energy intensities, which require different
Yeah.
carbon footprints as well. So there's a lot of consideration. Then graphics are very carbon intensive, energy intensive, as well as 360 virtual reality. So it's really not only being aware of that and designing around it. And there's such a trade off between creativity and sustainability. There's definitely some times where you need to focus on creativity and make that particular project and campaign as engaging as it can be. But there's also so many ways to reduce the environmental impact of communications. So through graphic design, color use, where you're streaming, the type of website
Yeah.
you're using. And although we are definitely not experts, we work very closely with some incredible consultants that lead this research. And there's so many gaps, there's so many gray areas in it in terms of definitive carbon footprinting, but it gives us the indication to help us design in a very sustainable way and it also really challenge our clients to think of those sustainable techniques that they can also implement.
I put everything in dark mode in every
Yeah,
app that I get so that I read about how black, right, is less of an energy intensive color than your typical white background, right? Here's design,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's why our core branding is dark gray, that space gray, because
Yeah.
a what bright white website is far more carbon intensive.
Yeah. There's, oh gosh, yeah, I don't want to get into AI, but I was reading about just the carbon footprint of using Chat GPT or any open AI product versus just a simple Google search that it's much more energy intensive. That's frightening.
It is. And I mean, the good news is, again, it brings us back to the data centers, that kind of hosting mechanism. If it's run off renewable energy, then you can sustain that. But if it's not, and it's based off of fossil fuel based energy, then yeah, absolutely, it's a huge detrimental impact.
Are you finding it through your consultants, your own work, that a lot of data centers are switching over to renewable? Like I know Amazon is a huge data center for like everything. So I hope they
Absolutely.
are.
Yeah, it's actually really exciting to see that switch because you can be aware of who you choose. So as soon as you look into it and you can on all website hosting, they will tell you if it's run off renewable or not. But YouTube, for example, we stream off most of our videos via YouTube because it's run off renewable data centers.
Oh, cool.
And but yeah, it's really cool. And the carbon calculator we've got at the top of the screen on our website is actually produced from Sustainable Web Design, which is a consultancy here in the UK. And you can simply Google it and install it into your website, and it will basically run through your system and do the checks for you. So it'll tell you if it's particularly heavy carbon intensive website, as well as if it's run off renewable energy. So it's a really neat way for that kind of base understanding, which has helped us because a lot of the time, the complexities, we do not understand the ins and outs, but
Yeah.
making sure that the guidance to make those design choices is the key element that we need.
Does it only work in the UK, that particular site?
I don't think so. I think it's global.
Oh,
So I
cool.
can double check that for you. One of the researchers that we worked with pointed us this way. And it's a really neat initiator of conversations as well as decisions, whether it's creative of your brand or creative decisions for a project. It's a really neat way to support those decision making processes. And it's something that is still largely neglected. I know there's a lot more conversations about email storing and how the drive as well, how keeping things longer on a drive is more energy intensive overall. But it's something that is still under researched and needs a lot more work. But even those considerations are key. And it's also kind of common sense when you start thinking about it and thinking, actually, everything's digitalized. And I've
Yeah.
never really considered the impact. I think there's a lot of assumptions around, oh, because it's digitalized, you can't see that
Yeah.
physical impact.
Yeah, I worked in print design for a number of years, and when I started to get so concerned about my environmental impact of chopping down forests to print these things I make, I just went to digital thinking now I'm guilt-free, but of course that's not true. The website
Exactly.
is websitecarbon.com. I just put in the climatedesigners.org website and we got an E. This is
Ah,
We are dirtier than 65% of all websites globally. Wow, that's not good.
well, I guess the good thing with that is that a large majority of websites are, so you're not alone.
No, no, I
It's
know. We're right on target for being the worst, and we should be better, right? Because we are the climate designers group.
but ours was just the same. And a really interesting learning that we also faced amongst all this had been during the pandemic. We trialed out a digital field trip, and a lot of our, I guess, hypotheses at the beginning had been actually there could be huge carbon savings if we digitalize field trips because we're not doing the physical field trips, we're not getting all the students out there, travel in general will be massively reduced. And then when we analyzed the digital carbon footprint of our 360 videos, 360 site, heavy graphic maps that were beautiful and amazing
Yeah.
versus the field trip. They were about the same in terms of
Oh,
carbon footprint.
really?
Yeah, which was super eye opening. And from there, I have greatly considered digital sustainability in every element of design choice and project structure that we run because it just shows so shocking of how big the carbon footprint can actually be digitally.
Yeah. Well, how do you approach these media projects that you have or that you do with more of an environmentally conscious mindset?
Great question. It's something, again, that's a massive balance between what the outcome is. So, for example, I would say a few rules of thumb in general would be use less graphics. If you're going to use graphics, use them wisely and don't overuse them as well. I think less is more for
Yeah.
sustainability
There you go.
purposes. But with, I guess, the consideration of this balance, a lot of the time when we're creating digital experiences, which is what we refer to as a multimedia 360 platform that we create. So we create them for field trips, we create them for digital reports. We feel a lot of the time we have to prioritize the creative approach. So the 360 videos, although they will be streamed on YouTube, so we can make creative, sustainable choices in some elements. But that's the role of the actual digital experience in itself and the engagement impact that it can have outweighs the role of the carbon footprinting in our eyes for that particular project. So it is completely subjective and dependent on each project. And I
Hmm.
think the crucial part is weighing up that creative sustainability balance and make sure that, especially a production process, is far more easily controlled because you can limit the amount you're traveling or the way you're traveling, and you can really control the elements of reducing your carbon footprint. So reducing it at source so that you don't
Yeah.
have to offset as much. But then in terms of digital sustainability, it's definitely a huge way up between the creativity versus sustainability.
Well, it doesn't sound like there's a perfect solution. There's a lot of trade-offs, and
Yeah.
probably because that system is sort of designed against the sustainable way of living and working.
Yeah, I would think so. And also the research is so underdeveloped as well that a lot of the time the rough estimates are all that you can go off. So I think it's something to consider within all design, and there's definitely sustainable production techniques to implement that I would encourage everybody to implement, down to travel, how many computers you're utilizing for editing or graphic design, what source of energy is your electricity coming from.
Yeah.
But for digital sustainability, I think the biggest thing that we're finding as a young team is making sure that we're continuing the discussion and training. So there are workshops online, there are incredible organizations and agencies like Whole Grain Digital is a great one here in the UK that are really leading not only the research, but the action surrounding what you can do as whether it's a project or whether it's an organization. So it's making sure that it's considered, I guess, from the outset.
I'm in my head, I'm looking at this sort of visualizing the system of how you work. And it seems like the overlap there is that for really making a big impact on the carbon footprint is energy. Like if we just had renewable energy and our transportation wasn't fossil fuels, you could be doing a heck of a lot more and not making all these trade-offs, right?
Absolutely. And that's a really great example of how the systems are kind of intrinsically positioned against us because
Yeah.
the default is fossil fuels. So you have to work a lot harder to seek the alternatives, especially with website hosting, which if we all just ran our data centers off renewables, it would be something that we wouldn't really need to consider.
Yeah.
But actually, in terms of the way that the systems contain and restrict that, it requires that consideration from the pre-production concept development stage.
That seems like the big leverage point here in this system that we live in is just our energy. If we switch that, it would make a ripple effect into everything that we do.
Absolutely. And I think as well, it would it would save a lot of decisions, to put
Yes.
it blunt.
Yeah.
It would save a lot of discussions and trade-offs, like you mentioned as well. I think it would free up a lot of creativity and as well with the virtual reality element, how we can actually engage people without the limits of sustainability in terms of carbon footprint. So I definitely see it as a restriction.
We'll be back after this message.
What do design students think about their education when it comes to sustainability and climate change? Are they satisfied with their studies and ready to apply their skills to the real world? Or are they longing to learn design frameworks, tools, and approaches more relevant to our ever-changing environment? My name is Zoe Eddington, researcher on the New Wave team at Climate Designers. Since 2021, the New Wave team has been asking these questions and interviewing various design students to get answers. In our previous reports, we analyzed student survey responses and summarized the key takeaways for design educators interested in their students' feedback. In our current report, we expanded our research to learn even more about the mindsets of design students by gaining responses from students from around the world and students from non-degree programs. We also included specific next steps for design educators. University instructor and New Wave information designer Stevie Bales provides specific resources as a starting point for updating course curricula to involve more climate education. Curious to learn more? Head to climatedesigners.org/edu/newwave to download our latest issue. Get in touch with us if you have any questions about our report or if you're interested in learning how you can bring climate-related content into your classroom.
Do you have a particular project that you're really proud of at Earth Minutes?
There is one particular project which I think has been the most fascinating to learn from as well as to innovate. And it's called Digital Ocean School. It's with one of our partners and clients, Surfs Against Sewage, that are based in the southwest of the UK. And they are campaigning for cleaner seas, healthier oceans. And it was something that I had personally, that's the Surfs Against Sewage were a particular charity that I started engaging in environmental activism back when I was around 16. So it was a real gateway to open my eyes to the world around me, to drive action, to empower me as a young leader. And when I got to around early 20s, I went and lived in London. And part of my role at Surfs Against Sewage had been to direct some workshops, some engagement presentations at local schools. And going there, I really felt a strong disconnection to the ocean, down to where they live,
Yeah.
but also down to the fact that the urban schools didn't prioritize ocean-based learning because they didn't really put it into the relevance of where they were as students. And so I felt really frustrated for all the students. I felt like that was a very unjust disconnection put on them. So I went and pitched to Surfs Against Sewage this concept of digitalizing Ocean School, which was one of their programs where they had ran workshops on a beach down here in the southwest. And I thought if we could bring it to life through virtual reality, through 360 technologies, we can take it to urban schools and show them, and then also bring them down to the beach after that kind of initial learning and the initial awareness. And although it's definitely not a replacement of physical experiences, this digital experience, Digital Ocean School, has been really fascinating in how it's opened the doors to engagement as well as innovated impact further. So we've been working out how we can test engagement through how long the students are watching the videos, how long the students are engaging on the platform, what actions they're clicking on, what actions they're taking. So we were really pushing that impact beyond views and likes. And we were really challenging, I guess, the traditional system of education, making sure that we can really bring not only futuristic ways of learning, but really creative techniques to reconnect those particular students to the ocean. And the results were absolutely fascinating. We had 7 minutes per student engagement time on the platform. And to put that in perspective, a virtual tour is usually around 3 minutes. So the engagement of this particular experience was beyond double.
Yeah.
And results of the education, the results of feeling connected, which was more of the feedback stage of the project, was just completely mind-blowing of why this, number one, hasn't been done before, but also why schools, I guess, restrict those resources and haven't prioritized that. And that's down to budgets, what the priorities are. It's just for geography and it's boxed in that small space. So that particular project, I feel very proud of dismantling systems and pushing through the kind of traditional is to innovate.
Yeah, because I'm an educator, right? And education is so siloed, right? And it's not how the world works. So it's not how nature works. And why doesn't education model itself after how nature works? It seems like that's what you were trying to do.
Absolutely. And it's even down to the kind of again, the root of disconnection, the frustration that their students are dropping plastic bottles in the streets and trying to get them to stop littering, but actually just connect the dots of if we drop that bottle, it's going to end up in this ocean system. Then that understanding is clear rather than feeling disconnected and separate from the ocean. It's not my problem. That rejoining of the dots is fundamental to any age of learning, but also just down to lifestyle values. And it's something that, again, the priority of the education system, it's different globally, but definitely here in the UK, it's prioritized around the economy
Yeah.
rather than the way that our systems, our natural systems function categorically.
Yeah.
So, and I know there's a lot of other countries that, even in Sweden, for example, that have completely different systems that are really working and benefiting sustainable living and thinking. But yeah, it's a great example of why innovating beyond the systems has really exciting impacts.
Would you call that the crisis of disconnection? I know you've
Absolutely.
talked about that in your work, and just the disconnect of throwing something away, right? Can you elaborate more about that?
Yeah, it's something that I also, it's really important to set a context of. It's not the problem of the individual. It's not, it kind of takes me back to when I was describing being in that classroom and trying to engage young urban students in the ocean. And it's not their fault at all. There's no connecting the dots for them or even providing them the resources. It's completely out of their hands. And you'd see it, the ocean as a completely separated, not your problem type position. So what's really important about disconnection is that's really enforced upon us through systems like the education system. And it basically creates a wedge between you and nature, or you and the environment.
Hmm.
I think and those systems are so separated from how we lived. And in fact, it's proven in indigenous cultures how indigenous communities choose to live their lifestyle. They fundamentally have sustainability at the core. And there's pandemics that they have survived and thrived in,
Yeah.
whilst when you see the kind of systems integrate this disconnection for wider society, it's now requiring this reconnection. So that's where comms and media projects, communications at a large are absolutely vital to use that powerful tool of reconnection to almost bring you back to the basics of
Hmm.
how best it is to live for yourself as well as for the planet system.
How do you personally reconnect yourself in nature? Do you go for walks? Do you put your hands in the dirt, or what do you do?
Yeah, I definitely do. It's something that I have to remember because when you work so hard on reconnecting others, you can get quite tunnel vision pretty quickly and
Yeah,
forget that you haven't actually left your house today.
that's me.
Or-
That was me yesterday.
Absolutely. And then you feel slightly less creative. You feel less energized, and you think, why on earth do I feel this way? I've had sleep, I've been eating,
Yeah.
and it's because you haven't had that nature time. And we always say in our team to take your nature time and check in on each other because it's so funny when you learn it, you completely respect why you need that time, but you can still forget to take it. And I love gardening. That's something that I have been really interested in. And we have this nature connection workshop which starts to unpick the science of why it's beneficial to go out and reconnect to nature. One of the particular researchers that we included into that workshop had been that when you had touch soil, when you garden, there's a small microbe that you absorb in your skin, which releases serotonin in your brains. It
Oh my.
acts in a way, but yeah, it's incredible. It
Yeah.
acts
Yeah. I didn't know
in a
that.
way chemically as antidepressants. So it's really powerful. And it's why a lot of the medical systems actually use green prescriptions. So gardening in part of their kind of mental health
That's great.
options. but it's something that it's just to be aware of why, I guess, it benefits you as well as you benefit nature and how nature impacts you, down to looking at the ocean. The blue mind theory is a really powerful framework that explains why looking at the ocean has a very calming, meditative state on the brain
Yes, I agree
versus
with
looking
that.
at the sea.
Yeah, I've definitely had that, and I didn't know what it was, but I was
Yeah,
so peaceful staring out at the water.
definitely. And I think what's been really useful for me learning that research has been how how much weight I put on it. So how much I prioritize it in my life. For example, when I do have a really busy day and I could easily work into the evening or can work on the weekends, I actually had to take a step back and think it's really vital that I get out, not only for your mental health, you as an individual, your well-being, but also for your creativity, your work. You will work more efficiently, you will work better.
Hmm.
And so you just have to understand why and how nature impacts you really helps you to weight it as such an importance to prioritize.
I learned about this past year calendar blocking, and so I've been blocking off times for going to the gym, right? As an example, so people don't add this meeting to my calendar, right? And so, would you think that that kind of technique would work with, going outside, getting dirty, gardening, blocking that off in your day, and so it's there, right?
It's actually crazy to think about that we don't have that in our systems already.
That
Thinks of how it's I guess it's the case of rest when you need to rest. It's making sure that we take our nature time so that our well-being continues to be strong and healthy. So I would absolutely say scheduling in nature time daily, not weekly, but daily, whether it's a 15-minute walk, different environments as well. Obviously, the accessibility to nature is a completely prevalent and crucial conversation to have because it's not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's definitely crucial to prioritize that within your day-to-day life, as well as your friends and families as well.
Well, that's changing the system there, right? Right? It's hey, you have to work 9 to 5 and or later until it's all done. So we're going to change that system and block off nature time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I notice in a lot of the creatives we work with because they're freelancers. So they have a lot of control and flexibility in how they run their lifestyles and their day-to-day itineraries. But if you boil it back to the traditional systems of what a 9 to 5 looks like and what the restrictions are on that, it definitely doesn't prioritize nature time. It doesn't
No,
encourage nature
no.
time. And the impact it has on your brain, your body, again, your creativity is completely detrimental. So I would very much encourage to challenge your own system that you've imposed on yourself of your 9 to 5 where you can and to take your nature time.
But what does the future look like for Earth Minutes?
For us, we really, really want to drive a new generation of creative climate communicators. So for me, I noticed that a lot of storytellers look and sound like me, which is really crucial to recognize because you have to recognize your own limits as a storyteller, your lived experiences. And also, I think what's crucial at the moment is when you look more broadly at the creative communication sector, it's still largely white and privileged.
Mm, hmm.
Really, really want to provide a framework, a program that will be launching actually at the end of this year called Generation Earth Minutes, where we'll be diversifying storytelling, we'll be making sure that we can bring in more storytellers that the stories are actually about. And the disability movement actually have a fantastic term for this, not about us, without us. And it's something that really applies to storytelling and communications because how on earth are you going to communicate the lived experience of urban communities connecting to nature without involving urban communities in the actual constructing of the story, the design of the story. There's no relatability or substance there. And that's where we need more diverse storytelling
Yeah.
in order to drive wider reconnection. So it will ultimately connect more people.
Otherwise, we're just colonizing again, right? It's that
Yeah.
this decolonization that's very important. And what was the quote again? It was not, can you say that quote again?
Yeah. Not about us without us.
Not about us, without us. Got it.
Yeah. And it's something that
I like that.
it's been great to empower our clients as well to really consider that. So, for example, if they're driving a youth campaign and nationally or globally and trying to engage more young people in their projects, ask them the question that have they actually got young people involved in helping them make and curate the project? And a lot of the time, the answer is no.
Yeah.
So it's how we can provide and empower a bit more of a framework to not only challenge that, but also make sure that we can drive more effective storytelling and wider communication as well.
Well, you were 22 when you started Earth Minutes.
Yeah.
What advice do you usually say to younger people who want to make a difference but don't know where to start?
I think for me, the reason why Earth Minutes evolved at that time in my life had been out of a pure frustration. So
Yeah.
like I had been in the science sector for a while at that point and really noticed again the gap between arts and sciences, which is as much as a lot of the education system and externally people were telling me that the gap is bridging. I just didn't see that in my career experience. I didn't see that with my own eyes. So I really felt strongly and empowered to do something about it. I was also given the opportunity to do something about it because the pandemic actually arrived and had been happening over the course of when I had started Earth Minutes. So it was a lot of time to reflect and think and be in a very privileged position to start a new venture. So that's something of it's not possible for everybody to stop what they're doing to start
Hmm.
a business. And I certainly didn't start full time. It was something that I've grown over the years. I have met amazing people that have evolved it further than I could have.
Yeah.
So it's been a very much a collective led evolution, meeting, sharing, learning, collaborating has been a core driver of why it exists today. And I think as well, it's super dependent on where you live, the position you are in growing up. I lived down in the countryside and I was very privileged to be in nature throughout my entire childhood. So that connection to nature is very deep ingrained within me as well. So it was pretty natural step for me to get more so involved in that sector and to really start driving and finding my passion of where my role and what my role is in this. So I think it doesn't really matter what age you are. I
Yeah.
think it's down to where you live, the experiences you have. And I think as long as you are brave to take those challenges to also challenge the norm of what you see around you, then I think that's what's incredibly key about creativity and creating something different and new and filling a niche. I think it's good to reflect and analyze, I guess, those systems around you.
When I think about like the idea of changing the system or challenging the system, and I think other people could feel the same way for sure, is it seems maybe daunting or too much for one person. And what would you say to that? Is there a way to challenge the system in a way that's not so overwhelming?
And I think that's a crucial point because I definitely have never seen me as an individual challenging the system. It's very much the collective people, the groups that I work with, the clients, the partners that we have joined forces with, that we are able to really challenge the system down to an array of lived experience and skill sets as well. But also, it's the system is completely looming, overwhelming, complex, and there is no way that we should put the pressure on ourselves as individuals to
Mhm.
solve that, to change it. So I think it's empowering people to share learnings, to share creativity, to share ideas, to join forces so that we can have this collective action, which will ultimately change the systems.
Community is important.
Absolutely, it's key.
Well, we're coming to my last and most favorite question that I ask every guest. And I'm curious, based on all your work and experience, if you were teaching a design class, what would you assign the students?
I think I'd assign the students to create a masterclass to empower more people to reconnect with nature and the environment. And that masterclass might be cultural, in person, dance, singing, music, or it might be film. It's something that would be completely intertwined to the individual's response to that. But yeah, challenge them to think about how we can empower other people to reconnect and recognize why and how we can reconnect.
I like the idea of with the students, what skills do they have? Like you mentioned, singing or music, and that those are the skills that they should use to make the empowering, whatever outcome it is. Because that's also empowering the students based on what they already are passionate about.
Absolutely. And communications isn't a one size fits all. We all are drawn and inspired by different things, different formats of communication. I love film. It's something that I can really sit with myself and engross myself in. I'm not a musician. I'm not a
Neither am
but
I.
but a lot of my friends are dancers, and that's how they feel inspired as well as communicate their challenges or inspiration that they face. So I think it's maximizing all forms of creativity so that we can also engage all sorts of people and communities. It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah. And I think as someone also in the arts, right? I think the community of the arts is one that's a very open, collaborative, right? So we have that community to use as part of maybe this, not just your assignment, but just the climate movement in general.
Absolutely. Creativity is going to be the most powerful tool to reconnect people back to this planet. So I'm very excited to see more creatives innovate, push boundaries, and drive impact in unusual ways because we need more creativity than ever.
Thank you, Emma. It's been a pleasure learning about Earth Minutes and your history and everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for your work. Well, that was a pretty amazing interview. Really enjoyed talking with Emma. She was fantastic to interview and she provides some amazing calls to action. And that's the segment that we are in currently. It's a brand new segment that we have developed for this season that unpacks what we heard in the interview, what we learned, and discuss it together to create climate calls to action for anyone listening to this episode. Hey, Jackie, welcome back. What were some of the main calls to action that you took away from Emma's interview?
Emma brought so many good perspectives, but what I really hope that other people will take away from it, like I did, is start small. You don't need to go big. It's just those little tasks like turning down the brightness on your phone and learning how to properly store your files, and
Yeah.
shutting off lights. It's the small things that really do make a difference. And it's really nice to hear that because
Yeah.
sometimes you feel like those small steps don't really add up to a lot. Um, But she also really was like, if you want to do something big and you want to create something like Earth Minutes, you have the power to do so.
Yeah.
It's not lost. You have it in you. And she inspired me. And I really hope that people will have that gumption to just take a little baby step.
Yeah, the little things matter. The little things can add up. And I think that's what she's evangelizing through Earth Minutes. One of the things that I thought about a lot when she was talking was her message about reconnecting with nature and make time in your day to do that. Block it out on your calendar. Gosh, we're both sitting here indoors. We're not recording this outside. And I'm looking outside and it's green. And I'm thinking, yeah, I guess I did go for a walk today, but it was accidental, right? I was just getting places. And I think it
Mhm.
would be nice to be a lot more focused on doing that as opposed to, oh, it just happened, right? And that was
Yeah.
a big takeaway for me.
Yeah. Mindfulness, being
Mindfulness. Yep, exactly.
present, and I think that being present in nature can bring so many positive benefits, whether it's inspiration to do something or just feeling one with the earth, appreciating what you have when you have it. And I want to go outside now.
You can get your hands dirty and maybe plant something for spring and just get outside, reconnect with nature. It was a big takeaway for me. What other things did stood out to you?
One of those last things that stood out to me was just to have a positive attitude towards climate change. Uh, she was very refreshing. And I
Hmm.
hope that that would be that the listeners could take some of that because that brings inspiration and that brings just a positive mindset overall. And I think that nowadays it's really easy to fall into that doomism.
Yeah,
And
doom and
she really,
gloom.
yeah, she really advocates for positive, bring the good vibes.
Yeah.
It'll bring you inspiration, it'll bring you happiness, and it'll just make climate change feel a little bit more tangible if you'd have
Mhm.
more of an open mindset to it.
Yeah, I felt she was full of energy and passion about what she was doing at Earth Minutes. And I mean, it takes a lot of bravery, right? I mean, she leaves her university and doesn't go the route of most people. They try to find the cushy job somewhere, but
Mhm.
she just says this is something I need to do. And she started this organization and it's making her happy doing it. So I that is inspiring, right? Just to go follow your dreams, I suppose, right? That sounds cheesy, but I think it's true,
But,
right?
yeah, but it's true, and she started at 22, and
Mhm.
you don't have to be a certain age to make a change, but it's nice to know that you can start young, but you don't have an expiration date. You can keep
That's true.
making a change every single day. Um,
Yeah, I think when you get older, like me, you get stuck in these like, hey, this is what my life's going to be. It doesn't have to be that way, right? You're not expired when you hit 40.
yeah, I'd hope
Yeah.
not.
No, no, you're not. Trust me. I've lived through that. One of the other things that I thought about, one of the last big takeaways for me to go and do something was her message about renewable energy, going solar at home, everywhere. Not everyone owns a home where they can install solar panels or has the money to do it, but you can buy into community solar programs where you live. 43 states here in the United States, plus the District of Columbia, have community solar programs. You can find them on energy.gov. We'll put that link in the show notes for you, where they can help you find community solar right near you.
And it's something you just do it once and it'll keep making changes.
Right.
And renewable energy is, I think, something we should really emphasize. And I
Hmm.
love how Emma talked about that because I feel like we forget about that. There's always talk about what's bad, and there's a lot of still good, and there's a lot of good in renewable energy. If you want to follow Emma and her organization on their environmental communication journey, you can visit their website at www.earthminutes.co.uk or visit their Instagram, Earth Minutes UK. We will also be linking in the show description the links to their social medias and their website. So we encourage you guys to go and check out their projects and what they continue to do.
If you would like more knowledge about the topics discussed by our guests today, you can check out these past episodes from our Climate family. Catherine Poole in Season 1, Episode 4, Kate Yoder in Season 2, Episode 3, and Brooke Havlick, Season 2, Episode 10. Thanks for listening. And we want to hear from you. What did you take away from this discussion? We also want to know how you are changing the system. Email us at climifypodcast@gmail.com or connect with us on Instagram at climifypodcast. We would love to read your inspirational stories on the show in upcoming episodes. This program is produced by Cam Birkins with writing and research by Abigail Zook, Jackie Himmel, and Bhavna Bhavani Shankar. Designed by Adam Java. Sound engineering and editing by me, Eric Benson. A special thanks to Mark O'Brien at the Climate Designers and Tink Media for their sage advice to make this season even better than the last. You can find design prompts and more information on all our guests this season at climatedesigners.org/edu/Climify and on Instagram and LinkedIn at Climify Podcast. If you enjoy the work we all do here and you have a spare minute or two, we would truly appreciate it if you left a rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. The more folks reviewing our program, the higher the algorithm pushes us up in the search results. And in turn, the more likely we all could learn how to become climate designers. Next week on Climify, we'll be joined by Kobe Nasik. He is a writer and environmental justice organizer living in Oakland on unceded Ohlone land. Originally from Texas, he now serves as the Coalition Director for Vision, which stands for Voices in Solidarity Against Oil in Neighborhoods. It's a group of frontline environmental justice, public health, and safety organizations working together to end neighborhood drilling in California.
The fight for environmental justice and the fight for abolition,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that they actually are deeply intertwined, and you cannot have one necessarily without the other, or rather you cannot have climate justice without abolition. And the people's plan for survival, for system change, is a plan of community care, a plan of resilience, a plan of land back, of returning the land to indigenous sovereignty that will protect it.